Great ancient civilizations, Greeks and Roman, did not use soap. Although the earliest recorded evidence of the production of soap-like materials dates back to around 2800 BC in ancient Babylon, and a formula for making soap was written on a Sumerian clay tablet around 2500 BC, Greeks and Romans, who pioneered running water and public baths, did not use soap to clean their bodies. Instead, men and women immersed themselves in water baths and then smeared their bodies with scented olive oils. They used a metal or reed scraper called a strigil to remove any remaining oil or grime. The Great Stork Derby. The Great Stork Derby was a contest held from 1926 to 1936. Female residents of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, competed to produce the most babies in order to qualify for an unusual bequest in a will. The race was the product of a scheme by Charles Vance Miller, a Toronto lawyer, financier, and practical joker, who bequeathed the residue of his significant estate to the married woman in Toronto who could produce the most children in the decade following his death. 11 families competed in the baby race. 7 of them were disqualified, but eventually Judge Middleton ruled in favor of 4 mothers: Annie Catherine Smith, Kathleen Ellen Nagel, Lucy Alice Timlick, who was failed verification, and Isabel Mary McLean, who each received $110,000 for their 9 children, which is equal to $2.5 million today. The Ghost Army of World War II. The Ghost Army was a United States Army tactical deception unit during World War II, officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, was activated on January 20th, 1944. The 1,100-man unit, who were artists, architects, actors, set designers, engineers, and lawyers, was given a unique mission: to deceive Hitler's forces and mislead them as to the size and location of Allied forces, while giving the actual units elsewhere time to maneuver. Although they consisted of only 1,100 soldiers, the contingent used equipment pioneered by British forces, such as dummy tanks and artillery, fake aircraft, inflatable tanks, cannons, jeeps, trucks, and giant speakers, broadcasting the sounds of men and artillery to make the Germans think it was upwards of a 2-division, 3,000-man force. They could create dummy airfields, troop bivouacs, complete with fake laundry hanging on clotheslines, motor pools, artillery batteries, and tank formations in a few hours. Their story was kept a secret for more than 50 years after the war, until it was declassified in 1996. The Mary Celeste's mysterious story. The Mary Celeste is a merchant ship that has remained a mystery since it was found abandoned in the Atlantic Ocean on December 4, 1872. When the ship was found, one of its lifeboats was missing, and it was in good condition, heading towards the Strait of Gibraltar with the influence of the wind. She had set sail about a month ago and already had 6 months' worth of water and provisions on board. Its cargo was untouched, and the personal belongings of the passengers and crew remained in their places. The ship's crew was never found and never heard from again. This abandoned and adrift ship remains one of the most mysterious stories in maritime history, with causal theories still unsolved. The London Beer Flood. Mew Brewery Company in Landon had a 22-foot-high wooden fermentation tank installed on the premises. Held together with massive iron rings, this huge vat held the equivalent of over 3,500 barrels of brown porter ale, a beer not unlike stout. On the afternoon of October 17, 1814, one of the iron rings around the tank snapped. About an hour later, the whole tank ruptured, releasing the hot fermenting ale with such force that the back wall of the brewery collapsed. The force also blasted open several more vats, adding their contents to the flood, which now burst forth onto the street. More than 320,000 gallons of beer were released into the area. This was St. Giles' Rookery, a densely populated London slum of cheap housing and tenements inhabited by the poor, the destitute, prostitutes, and criminals. The flood reached George Street and New Street within minutes, swamping them with a tide of alcohol. The 15-foot-high wave of beer and debris inundated the basements of houses, causing them to collapse. In all, 8 people were killed. The Cadaver Trial. The Cadaver Trial is the name commonly given to the ecclesiastical trial of Pope Formosus, who had been dead for about 7 months in the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome during January 897. The trial was conducted by Pope Stephen VI, the successor to Formosus's successor, Pope Boniface VI. Stephen had Formosus's corpse exhumed and brought to the papal court for judgment. He accused Formosus of perjury, of having acceded to the papacy illegally and illegally presiding over more than one diocese at the same time. At the end of the trial, Formosus was pronounced guilty, and his papacy retroactively declared null. Ottoman Sultan banned coffee. Ottoman Sultan Murad IV banned coffee in 1633, making consumption a capital offense. The Sultan was so intent on eradicating coffee that he would disguise himself as a commoner and stalk the streets of Istanbul with a 100-pound broadsword. Unfortunate coffee drinkers were decapitated as they sipped. Mary Toft delivered rabbits. Mary Toft became the subject of considerable controversy when she tricked doctors into believing that she had given birth to rabbits in. In 1726, Toft's claim to have given birth to rabbits prompted the arrival of John Howard, a local surgeon, who investigated the matter. He duly notified other prominent physicians, which brought the case to the attention of Nathaniel St. André, surgeon to the royal household of King George V. St. André concluded that Toft's case was genuine, but the king also sent surgeon Cyriacus Aulus, who remained skeptical. By then quite famous, Toft was brought to London, where she was studied in detail. Under intense scrutiny and producing no more rabbits, she confessed to the hoax and was subsequently imprisoned as a fraud. The resultant public mockery created panic within the medical profession and ruined the careers of several prominent surgeons. Toft was eventually released without charge and returned home. Emu War. The Emu War was a nuisance wildlife management military operation undertaken in Australia over the later part of 1932 to address public concern over the number of emus, a large flightless bird indigenous to Australia, said to be destroying crops in Western Australia. The unsuccessful attempts to curb the population of emus employed Royal Australian Artillery soldiers armed with machine guns, leading the media to adopt the name Emu War when referring to the incident. Instead, the bounty system that had been instigated in 1923 was continued, and this proved to be effective. 57,034 bounties were claimed just over a 6-month period in 1934. Balloon Man J.W., who spent his entire life only going for a poo about once a month, suffered with a condition called congenital aganglionic megacolon, or Hirschsprung's disease, which happens when nerve cells within the colon don't develop properly, making it difficult for waste to move through. Sadly, rather than getting help, Eged 20, the man ended up in the museum as an exhibition where he was known as the Windbag or Balloon Man, and people would pay to come and see him due to his extended abdomen. He eventually died in 1892 when he was just 29, due to the condition, being found dead in a bathroom where he was attempting to go to the toilet. After his death, surgeons removed his colon, which was found to be holding 8 kias of excrement. At its largest ever, the colon was a whopping 76 cm in diameter. It is in the Mutter Museum at the College of Physicians of Philadelphia.